Hello and welcome to another ToolUp Tuesdays here on Cloud with Chris. Thank you for joining and thank you for spending your evening with us. So you may remember last time we embarked on a journey. We started building a game of all things, called it Spacebars, and we did a lot of planning last time. So today we're going to go ahead, we're going to actually do some building. So of course it is a pleasure to bring back my colleague and good friend, Mr. Matt Fatunka. Hello, Matt.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Chris. How are you doing?
All good, all good. It looks like your camera may be struggling again, though, sir. There we go. You're back.
I'm just moving very slowly. That's what it is today.
Ah, you're doing like Matrix style. Got it. How are things? All good?
It's all good. Yes. I've been immersed in C# today, so it's always a good day.
Ah, so we're in preparation then for this evening.
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully. Well, yeah, we'll see.
Are we ever prepared for this? I really
No,
don't
not
know.
at all. And that's part of the fun.
Exactly. I was putting some messages in the chat just while the countdown was going. You know how we like seeing people's messages. So, of course, if you are watching, drop us a message, say hello. But yeah, is this a recipe for disaster or is this a game in the making? We will definitely find out. Your camera has indeed gone again.
Camera's struggling again. You want to drop me out and I'll see if I can give it a kick in a minute.
All good. While you sort yourself off, I'll bring you off the screen for the time being. And we'll go ahead and just kind of recap where we are and what's going on. So for anyone following along, we have got this Cloud with Chris ToolUp Tuesday Git repository. So go ahead, I've put a link into the chat if you are interested, and that we can just bring up on screen here as well. We're going to be doing this all out in the open, so if you want to go and join and you want to come and collaborate with us, absolutely go and do that, because we've got no idea where this is going to go, just like yourselves. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And there we go, we have Matt back with us.
Back again, hopefully. Don't know for how long, we'll see. Definitely
the joys.
I've upgraded OBS today. It's always a bad thing to do on a recording day.
Oh, upgrading. Don't upgrade things.
Yeah, bad plan.
So I guess just in terms of what's changed since last time, I cleaned up a few of the issues that we were working on, just so we've got a bit of clarity on what we're working on. And then I've added a source folder in, because I guess the next logical thing for us to go and work on is going to be that game engine. There were two real parts to the engine: the world events and the player decisions. Made a bit of a decision for us. Decided that we'll go for .NET on the world events engine, and go on the player decisions engine.
Yep, it was a good call. And a console
where we are.
The decisions engine as well, the world engine as well.
Indeed, yeah. And again, we can change that, obviously. We can change that, of course. There we go. But yeah, very, very basic file new kind of stuff going on here right now. So I guess from this point, this is where we get going. We get coding.
Yeah. So what do we want to achieve by tonight? Let's do this in a proper kind of almost agile-esque fashion.
It would be great.
We'll see how close we are to the target at the end.
That's going to be bold in an hour and a half. I guess it would be good to have the very minimalist of forms of something for the world events engine, because I think that's going to be the main bulk of the game, isn't it? So obviously player decisions will be interacting with it, and that's going to be API calls at the end of the day. But in terms of getting that logic to kind of circulate and permeate through for the game state, I think it's the world engine, isn't it?
So in essence, this is going to be a program that will effectively run every day. Is that right? Is that how we're thinking about this?
It's a good question, isn't it?
Because that was the original scope we talked about 2 weeks ago. Was the idea that this would be something that people log in, and then at a certain time of day, there are a set of events that get applied, which impacts all of the players' current state.
Yep. Agreed.
So we're going to need players' current state to start with, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think something that we should keep as a little design decision in the back of our minds as we do this would be keeping flexibility just on that point you mentioned about how many times it runs in a day.
Yeah.
Like if we initially decided it was going to be twice, or we decided we wanted it to be a continuous, like a Kubernetes controller, just keeping an eye on the state of what's going on in the desired state.
Yeah.
If we can almost try and bake that in and give that flexibility, that would be quite interesting as well.
Or even going back to this is triggered by something happening on social media.
Yeah, indeed. Because they all come part of the same piece, don't they? Something's happened, let's calculate game state based upon an external event that has triggered it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
Right.
Shall I switch over to you? Because it looks like you've got VS Code open there. So,
I do, yes. My happy place. There we go. So I think... I think we're going to need another project here as well.
Let's go for it.
Now, this is where it gets interesting around the idea of having multiple languages in play.
I think I know where you're going here.
Because
would you by any chance be thinking about like shared data models and things like that?
Yes, exactly. I think if we think that the world engine is going to have an impact on player state, and the player decisions is going to impact player state, we either need to have some API that represents getting player state, which then maps to models in native languages, which might be the way to go.
Yep.
Or we do shared assembly imports, and the microservice thing is probably the right way to go here.
It is, I agree. Because it does feel like a microservice-based esque kind of system, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I think we're going to end up with some sort of repository API.
That would seem sensible.
Would that be a good place to start?
I think so.
So let's bring up a terminal. And then I think if we go into there... Oh, hang on. I can't spell right. Or can I?
That's always the challenge with demoing live and doing things live.
Right, so I think we're going to need to do... Should we do this in .NET? .NET New Web API?
That looks good.
Seems to be a good start, doesn't it?
I think, let's keep it simple for the time being, isn't it? And stay with what we know.
What's this? Player data repo, isn't it? Or player state?
Player state.
Repo?
Yeah, let's...
Player state?
I like the term player state.
Okay. Is that right? Have I done that right? I can never remember this command off the top of my head. That's looking good. Right, okay, so we've now got a new API in there. And it's nice. We can get rid of some of this cruft because
unless we want to bring weather into the game straight away,
Very possibly. My camera's gone again.
It has. I'll take you off screen for the time being, so you're not seeing yourself deep in thought. Let me just go and check some of the different channels that we've got going on here.
On your API?
Oh. So I've just realized I don't think I can I had you off screen, so if you were talking I wasn't hearing you. But I don't think I can.
Let me try the default, just using the camera without its without going through OBS. It doesn't look like OBS.
Seems stable.
That looks better, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks a lot better.
I was before as well. Okay, cool.
There we go.
So we
anything you said for like the last minute we lost because I had you off screen.
Yeah.
My bad.
So we could go down the route of doing the minimal controller, the minimal.NET API, where we would end up doing something like app.mat get, and then provide some. There you go. It actually pulls it all out for me. There you go. GitHub Copilot at work again, I suspect. So we could do that. I find that really, really useful if you've got really small, very simple APIs. My fallback, though, is still to go to a controller, to an API controller, because then I can control. I've got more grouping and more logical kind of structure to my project.
And I think that's it, isn't it? Is initially, for us getting started, that's a nice, quick way of working.
Yeah.
But if we find that that API plane is getting larger and larger, it's getting messy, then we can always move across common. So
we're going to have a player state controller. Now I've got to remember this.
And I should add, for anyone who's thinking, hold on, why is Chris not doing some coding alongside? We did plan ahead and make the conscious decision to pair program rather than do two people coding at once. Felt that may have been a bit much for the stream.
Space. Oh, look at this. Oh,
that is knows about our game.
Copilot is just awesome.
It is indeed, isn't it?
I don't know if anyone was doing the Advent of Code last December. Really good fun. I got to about day 15 before I had to give up. But actually, for large parts of it, GitHub Copilot was solving those problems for me.
Well, honestly, the amount of times I write blog posts now with GitHub Copilot on, because I'm just typing things, and it will predict quite literally what is running through my head. I'll kind of leave it for a second, and the next few sentences it's got. It's impressive.
Yeah, I found it interesting with if I'm writing something in Markdown files.
Yes, exactly.
And it starts predicting. If I was writing a presentation outline for a presentation I was giving on Azure DevOps. And GitHub Copilot was suggesting the topics I should talk about next in my presentation. And also kind of sentences that would actually describe why. Absolutely mind-blowing. Really good.
It's impressive, isn't it?
Right. So I don't need any of that. It's generated too much for me now.
It's too clever.
Do I need to drive that from controller? I'm having a brain fart now. I need to drive that. Yeah, what's the namespace? So it would be.
Yes, we haven't got any using statements in here.
Come on. System.web. It's getting late.
It is very late to start coding.
Now, what I can't remember is whether or not this is the format from the old version of .NET or the new one.
And this is a really good talking point, actually, while we're doing this. And I think you and I have both talked about this a little bit in the past. But I think sometimes there's this perception from people that as developers, we may know the ins and outs of every single framework and what system libraries are where and all of these kind of things. And people like, I think, Scott Hanselman and others have talked about this as well, where, I do not remember that stuff. I look it up just as much as anyone else.
No, and the irony is that the schoolboy error I made there was deleting the weather controller rather than just renaming it, because that had it all set up in place.
Yep.
And ironically, that's what everyone would do. You very rarely you start writing one of these files from scratch. At the very least, I'd probably be doing this in full fat Visual Studio, so I would have a better level of code generation on the particular files that I'm adding.
Exactly.
Right, so I can do this now because I've copied it from another one. There we go. That's going to be controller base. Go, and we're going to want to specify this as having a root, something like that. Specify it as an API controller, or I think that's a legacy construct as well. But
seems to work.
I'm going to add a constructor in there. Come on, do that again.
There you go.
Okay. I don't quite know what I'm going to put in there yet, but we'll get there in a minute.
Exactly.
Now, we're going to need to be able to retrieve player state.
We're going to want to get. We're going to want to set. What I'm trying to break down is just thinking through the generic way of working with that as a data store.
Yep.
Because we're probably going to want to. I'm thinking in terms of REST operations now, like a patch and a put and things like that.
Yep.
That's probably not a bad place to start if we're talking about in a web API, is it?
So, I mean, let's just start with. So, a user is going to need to be able to update their state.
Yep.
Or at least the player service is going to need to be able to update the user state based on their decisions.
Yep.
And then the world engine is going to need to be able to update state based on what's happened in the world.
Yep.
So we basically got an upsert, haven't we, effectively?
Indeed.
Are we going to need to delete? Probably not for now, but...
Unless the user decides they're done with the game.
Yeah. So we're going to HTTP get public. We can just do that.
I was about to say, there we go.
That's pretty good.
We should have introduced our third guest, GitHub Copilot.
Yes. And then we're going to do that on a post, I guess. Come on, you can do that. There you go. That's really cool. I love it when it does that now. And then, so one of the patterns I've used in the past, which I quite like with this, because we don't know what our underlying data store is going to be.
Yep.
So what I tend to do is to create a service behind an interface that I can just do, here's an in-memory version of this.
Exactly. Yep.
So let's go ahead.
Also good from a unit testing perspective then as well.
Absolutely. Because that's what we're going to be doing lots of is unit testing. Absolutely,
100%. Doing all the right practices from the beginning.
Yes.
Meanwhile, 2 years later, they did, but still hadn't made the game.
Service. Yes. And then we're going to do namespace player. See, I wanted to do that, but I don't want to do all of it because I want to use the new inline version. Spacebar.playerState.services, because it makes the file look a bit neater. So I've now got a file scope namespace on there. So I can now do file. Oh, what am I doing wrong? How do I get Copilot to do that? That's better. Let me get rid of that. Don't need that one. And then this thing is going to have, in fact, what I'm going to rename this one to is in-memory player state service. And then we'll replace it with a your chosen store implementation. And then we're going to have, what was it, a get and a post, isn't it? So what we'll do is we'll just have a private list of, oh yeah, we haven't actually defined our model yet. That'll come next.
No, that's exactly what I was just thinking.
It quite happily wants to let me do that anyway.
Maybe it knows what our model is.
Well, like it's just doing it anyway. I'll just keep doing this now. I'll just keep tabbing and it'll generate everything for you. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that'll do.
That sounds good. Yep.
Yep.
Anything else, Copilot? Anything else for us?
Yeah. Well, what's your next suggestion?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's
Let's bring that in.
Oh, good.
We might get a lot further than we thought we were going.
Yeah. Suddenly, now the 2-year deadline became 2 months. Right. Now let's think, because we don't have to make this the final version of the model, but we should at least give it a good stab, I guess.
Yep.
player, I think, is going to be represented as a GUID is probably a safe assumption.
Yep. Leave that there. So we're going to want, what are we going to want? So public GUID ID.
Yep. Username. Or would you have that as a separate account type service?
So it's an interesting question there, because your state is going to be associated with a player, but is that actually, like, do you decouple those? Do you make sure that your player state is somewhere else?
I think for now it doesn't necessarily matter, does it? I think
No.
we can always add that in later. So
because it comes down to how you're doing how you're identifying your player. So if your player is a Twitter user, then it's going to be their Twitter handle. If it's an AD user, it's an object ID somewhere.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, Facebook, it's whatever their bizarre system is.
So yeah, let's leave that one for now.
Player state. So we're going to have what a bar name.
So well, we're back to that debate from last time. Is a player equal a bar?
Oh yes.
I think a player would have an inventory which could include like assets, effectively, which includes a bar.
Yep.
So an assets could be a class, which is a list of assets.
Well, yeah. I'm wondering whether or not we start with a list of bars.
Fine.
Yeah. So.
But let's have bar as a subtype of an assets.
Yeah.
Just to.
Do that in VS Code. I'm gonna have to switch to full pack Visual Studio in a minute.
Do it.
I miss my comforts.
And it's interesting, like for a lot of stuff I do use VS Code, but for .NET I find I go back to Visual Studio as well. I think it's just creature of habit.
Yeah. Let's close that one. I'll open that up on a new window. Open project.solution. And I'll open that up now. Give me a minute. So I just want to open up the models, don't I, right now? Player state. There we go. Now there's an interesting dilemma here, in that we're going down the route of choosing a microservices based architecture.
Yes.
Right? Almost without thinking about it. And the weird part here is that the driving force for us going down and microservices is the fact that we've got multiple languages in play.
Indeed.
Right. So if you were looking at this from a kind of almost an old school monolith, I mean, if you think, all I'm just trying to get to is that
I'm with you.
In Go now, we are going to have to create models that map to the C# classes that represent the output from the API, and we're also going to have those defined in C# as well. And that's the modern reality of the world we live in that if you want disparate projects to be working in different languages, then your API level becomes your interface between those things.
I was just trying to think if something like Dapper would solve that, but
a Dapper, yeah. Because now I can do things like generate type. There you go. Now I'm fucking.
Just thinking, would Dapper solve something like that? I guess you would serialize to your JSON, or
yeah, you're still using JSON as your schema layer between your APIs.
You still need a consistent definition, I think, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Ironically, what we end up using is that what you would traditionally do with a C# with a .NET project is you would define a separate assembly that had all your models in it.
Exactly.
The minute you do microservices, then that assembly itself is a Swagger definition.
Yeah.
Because it's the definition that you can use to generate in the native language the tooling for that particular, like the objects for that particular language. Now, I also wonder whether or not you could go down the route of something like protobuf and gRPC. But that's solving the same problem in my mind as OpenAPI does.
That's a futurist problem. I think for now, let's pretend like we're working in a .NET world. Then when we get to that point, something we can. And again, I know in the real world we wouldn't think that way. We would have a plan. But
I mean, the advantage is that because we've started with a .NET project, a .NET Web API, straight away we've got the Swagger Gen enabled and the Swagger UI enabled. So we have that definition that we can use to import to other languages if we need to. I think we're going to need some currency.
Yep. I'm just thinking, would that be... I think we were calling it like economy, weren't we? As a broader...
Yeah, but you've got a balance sheet, haven't you, effectively, for the player?
I'm just thinking of down the road. Yeah, currency... Are you thinking of it like you've got this much money left, or transactions?
Effectively, every user at a certain point in the game starts with a certain amount of currency. They can use it to buy one or more bars. So that's your initial part. And then once they've bought their bars, they can then use that to influence kind of hiring decisions on people that are there. And then that actually comes back to this idea of a player owning multiple bars. Then at that point is that the player could use earnings from a very successful bar to buy more bars. So I think we're going to need some sort of currency. Now Chris has disappeared off to get food, so I can make all sorts of bad decisions now. Now that we've got currency, we'll put a name in there as well. Yes, thank you. Visual Studio, equivalent to Copilot. I didn't make too many bad decisions while you were on there.
I was dealing with Deliveroo drivers. Food is somewhere near, hopefully.
So I've stuck a currency on there.
Cool, looks good.
And I've stuck a name on there as well.
Well, the name of the player.
Currency doesn't sound. I don't know. We didn't need that. Currency, I think, is just funds, isn't it? And I've stuck that as an int. And my rationale behind that is not wanting to have to deal with decimals. I
think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Which is how all the best decisions get made. Is it's the fundamentally lazy. I don't want to have to deal with that problem. So then what else have we got? So do we keep the pool of people? Are people associated with the bar, as in employees?
They are, but I don't think they're part of the bar model. Would people work at a bar? Would the bar...
Or I suppose people? If you're employed by the player, but then allocated to a bar. Is that the way that works? So actually, you'd end up with a employee array. Something like that.
Yep, that looks good.
And then the bars would be allocated certain employees.
Let's say yes for now and see how that unravels. Just in the interest of us getting somewhere going.
And the way so the way I think about that is that if you need to make sure that all of your employees are actually allocated to doing some work, otherwise they're just costing you money.
Yep. the other way I was thinking about it as well is whether you'd need the relationship from the other way around, so the employee to the bar mapping. But again, we'll come back to that one.
Yep.
Because they're like NPC type things, aren't they? So.
Right. Is that everything?
I think it's a good way to get started.
Yep. Then, what's that complaining about now? That's new. There we go.
So it could be an empty array. Is that what that's?
Make sure it's not null. Yes.
Yeah.
So it can be empty, but can't be null.
Gotcha.
But you might actually want that to be null, though, wouldn't you? Because if you haven't got any bars and you haven't got any employees,
I guess you'd still expect an empty array, though, wouldn't you?
Would you? Yeah, I suppose you would. Let's go with that.
Let the tools guide us.
Yeah.
It's worked well so far.
I'm sure that's not going to come back to bite us at some point in the future. Right, so
we'll just clip this bit just to remind us when it does come back to bite us.
Yeah. So bar is going to have an ID, another GUID, I guess.
Indeed, yeah.
The
bar will have a name.
See, there's an interesting thing here.
Yes.
And it's, I think there's two versions of the player state, isn't there?
Okay.
I think there is a player state that is impacted by the world events. And then there is a player state that the user sees. And I don't think they're necessarily the same thing. And the reason I'm saying that is if you think about bars and employees in this context, there might be some underlying properties of a bar and employee that we don't necessarily want the user to see. So we might have a, I don't know.
Yeah, there's almost an internal game state, isn't there?
Yeah. And I'm wondering how, when we expose this out through the API, whether or not we leave it to the clients to decide to not show particular bits of information, or whether or not we send out a summary.
No, I don't think you need to expose it. I think it's more of a narrative thing at that point. Like,
yeah,
it's just part of the internal game mechanic that you don't want to expose. And I guess that's where I really see the difference between the world events engine versus that player API, which exactly goes to that point then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then what factors do we want? So are we saying there's going to be a list of employee IDs?
I think it makes sense.
So public GUID array non-nullable employees. Now, why wouldn't we do a reference to the employees? I'm guessing because you'd end up with a circular reference then, potentially, wouldn't you? Right now, I've just chosen to flag them by the IDs that are the IDs that are there. That's why you just maintain one list of employees at the player state, and then
yeah. I guess where my mind is going is thinking of a concrete example, like if you were hosting this in like a SQL database or a Cosmos DB or something like that. And
I think there's also an element of your payload size on your API.
Exactly. Those are the things I was worried about, because that's a lot of data to bring down if you're trying to get, in a bar. If you've got like 1,000 employees and you've got a really successful bar, that's going to be a big API call.
Yeah, we might have to invent some sort of disease that takes them out.
Too real. So
maybe.
How about drinks as well?
Yeah. So what are we going to do? Do we just want to have do we just want to have a generic kind of inventory item?
Yes, 100% on that one.
So
because I think then you could do inventory of things like chairs and tables, and drink is just a type then, because you could run out of booze, you could run out of certain drinks,
yeah,
you could run out of tables. This gives us an angle, and maybe this is what we need to think a bit about as well from a game mechanic perspective, is the type of events that are triggered.
Yeah.
So you've run out of a blah type thing, you've oversold or overstocked on a blah and things like that, which would all be inventory type. So,
see, this is where I the way I'm starting to think now is this distinction between the internal model and what the API exposes.
Yep.
Because for the world engine, the API is going to need to expose all its internal stuff.
Yep.
And that might be stuff like a bar might have a popularity rating.
Yep.
So public int popularity.
I will 2 seconds.
And what else would it have? So that's going to be the that's going to be the so if we do a 0 to 100 ranking of start putting some comments on that now. Drinks, furniture. Employees that are allocated to work in this bar. And I'm not going to put a comment on name and ID because I would hope they're pretty self-explanatory. So that's then the popularity of the bar. I think what we're going to need is
now, did you write those comments? Or
I did. No, I
go.
actually wrote some comments.
There we go.
So the other one I was thinking of was a district.
Mm-hmm.
So you can choose which part of the map your bar is in, and then the world, you might have events that impact particular districts.
Yep.
Oh, you're making me hungry now.
What's that?
You're making me hungry now. So I'm going to go and do that. And we won't worry about that just yet.
And I think for the initial kind of version, that's probably a good amount of properties. You know, if we think that there's inventory events which impact the popularity as well as the area which impact the popularity, do you get the riff-raff coming in, are you really uptight kind of rich place, what those factors combined with what types of inventory you have as well, and making the right decisions.
So that in employees, quickly, we've got one of those, we've got a name, we've got a public species. Is that how you spell species? I'm not sure.
Can confirm.
I'm going to make that very quickly into an enum. They're going to have.
Do you want to be an enum? Because you could have some interesting characteristics about like how they hold their drink and things like that.
All right. Wow. Okay.
Just leaving us open for some future growth.
Well, they're going to have a salary. I've had this sudden flashback of if you've ever done the intro to the C# fundamentals training course, which I used to teach quite a lot. One of the big things that you use to explain object-oriented principles is the idea of a employee class and a manager class and a super manager class and an executive class. And I just suddenly had a horrible flashback. Well, no, not horrible. It was a great flashback of teaching that over and over and over again.
It was bringing back memories.
It was, yes. Do we want an age on there as well?
Why not?
That should do. That's a good starting point, isn't it?
I think so. We could eventually go down the route of like skills or something.
Yeah, I was just mulling over whether or not you had a skills is probably a good way of defining it, but yeah. I think the way you do it now is that you your bar has a certain amount of demand for particular job roles, and that anyone can do any job.
Exactly.
Right, so we've done bar, we've done district. No, we haven't done district. So it's going to be an ID on there. It's going to be a GUID again. And it's going to be a name, null. And then it's going to have a opulence rating.
You could have population.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm just trying to think. You almost want like not a GGP, but something like that, a measure of like how wealthy the area is.
It's almost a class, isn't it? It's a class system. Like, without saying a class system, how do you say it's a class system?
Economic rating.
Yep.
On a 1 to 10 scale.
One poorest, 10 richest. And then that is an interesting one actually, because that then impacts property prices.
Yep. Which the bar should have a value.
Yep. And that's going to be an int, isn't it? So what do we want, the sale value of the bar?
I'm just envisioning we're going down like the capital gains you've passed go kind of.
Well, we've gone this far now.
Let's just keep it a value for the time being.
Yep. So we've got district, we've got a bar, employee, we know. Inventory item, I think is the only thing. Inventory item and species, we've got. So an inventory item is going to have an ID again. And a name is going to have a GUID ID.
It's probably going to have some kind of category. It might be furniture, it might be a drink, it might be. You'll probably have a value.
Yep.
Or cost.
That gets into that whole, again, this is your OO hierarchies then at that point, isn't it? Because your chairs, your furniture probably doesn't have a value as a sale value. I suppose it might do. Yeah, why not? Let's call that an item. Inventory item category.
I appreciate the nice, well-named classes.
Hmm?
I appreciate the nice, well-named classes.
This is how it starts. Talk to me again in a few months. When you end up with inventory item category factory repository service.
I mean, it does what it says on the tin. It just means you need to think about it for a moment.
Yep. And that's about it, isn't it? I guess. Type. Oh yeah, we've got category there. Name.
I'm guessing that for each individual item, we would have a record. So, if I had like 12 chairs, that wouldn't be like a quantity field. It would be we have 12 unique records. Or would you want a quantity?
Well, I mean, the other way you could potentially do it would be to instead of making it a in the bar, instead of making it an array, we make it a dictionary with an int. So inventory item count, effectively.
So effectively it becomes a ledger sheet, doesn't it?
Yeah. So then you end up with effectively that. List of assets and the number. So a bit like that. And then item categories. So it's probably going to have an ID again because everything's going to have a GUID at some point. And then it's going to have a name and then a type as well. Like, oh no, because that is the category. So yeah. And we'll just leave it at that for the moment. Player state, species. So I think that's all our models. Oh no, species was still the other one, wasn't it?
Now, species is the individual, right? Whereas species would be plural.
So species is the employee has a species.
Gotcha. Yep, with you.
So this is the, it's a public holiday for this particular species. They can't go to bars on this day, or the reverse.
It was just the term species. I was trying to think if it was single or plural. But I guess you'd have a load of species, and this is a species. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Just thinking when we inevitably come to querying things later and thinking of terminology.
Yeah, but we can start building on those. Like, again, if we keep it at this level now, when we need to have world events that impact a particular species, we can add data to the model to go and show this is what happens next. Okay. So my controller now, my player state controller. Nope, I want my service, don't I? My in-memory service. That's going to get my player state. Nope. Why is that not finding that? Using. What did we call it? We did call it player state, didn't we?
Did we actually make? Yeah, we have got a player state.
It's curious that it's not. I wonder if it's not.
Oh, it's in memory player state, I think.
No, we've got a player state model. I'm wondering whether it doesn't like the inline namespaces. Should do. What did I call it? Player state. Just see what happens with that. No, that should be right. Okay, do it that way then. Weird, but okay.
It's technical debt we can clean up later.
Yeah, I've got to refactor all this now because it's it's assuming, because we let it generate the code, so that's going to be a GUID ID where x.id equals ID set for, so that'll throw a wobbly if it can't find it. Save player state, get player state ID. Oh, God. Just replace it all.
Yeah, I think
I want an index of, don't I?
Yes.
So I want that one to return. Because if I just do a straight existing player state equals player state, that's not going to update it, is it? Let's go and auto-generated code. See, we can sack GitHub Copilot now. I don't like this. So we're going to go underscore player states dot index of. Is there a function on there? Am I doing this right now? So let's go existing player state equals get player state ID index of get that one, and then what I should be able to do is just do that. That's right, that's better. Sam, did you check that for me?
Yeah, I was just thinking that looks cleaner.
Now the challenge is that if it's not there,
exactly.
So
just want to say that.
No, then do that.
It's our episode, actually, isn't it?
Do I want to add it as a new one? Yes, I do. Yes. There we go. So that would maintain that in-memory model, and then delete player state will do the same again, effectively.
Yep.
Get player state ID. If it's not there anyway, I don't need to worry about it, so it'll just fail. So we get that one.
We just need to handle that gracefully, won't we?
Player states dot remove. Don't I remove at index. Good. Right, that should do. About right?
I think so. I'm just thinking it through if there's anything else in there we need to consider, but I think as a first pass it looks good.
Just rename these to get, save.
Do we need to initialize anything in our constructor at all?
Not for this version, because it's using just a list in memory, so it's kind of done it anyway. I mean, if I'm doing it properly, I'll actually read down the just to make sure it can't be initialized anywhere else. That should do it, I think.
Okay.
I really should be writing unit tests here, but extracted interface. Player state service. Cool. So we now have an interface that's there with those on.
Good.
Right. So now we wire that up into our controller.
Yep.
So I need to go and do builder.services.add singleton, I think. We're never going to have more than one.
Now, this raises a very interesting question. I guess if we were scaling out across many instances.
But you'd have an underlying data store. So,
this is true.
And the service that's handling is just there to handle data access. It's not like in reality you replace it with a Azure storage player state service or a Cosmos DB player state service or whatever.
Yeah, it is just literally retrieval, isn't it?
So it's going to be a singleton, isn't it? It's going to be a singleton of type I player state service. And then by default, that is going to be goes to new in memory, and that should do it to start with. Now in my controller, we're going to use the magic of dependency injection to inject that into our class.
Dependency injection is a wonderful seventh wonder of the world.
The ASP.NET one is lovely. I used to do it with what was the entity framework one? Unity. Not an entity framework, the patterns and practices libraries. And Unity was great. I need to set up my Visual Studio because I hate the fact that it gives internal properties the same name as the parameter that I'm passing. And then this will become underscore player state service dot get. That's going to be a GUID ID from the query string. Return that, don't we? Return JSON content. I think.
So JSON. I always get confused between the
there's
different software
now, isn't there? Because there's that as well. You can do that, and I can never remember which way around it is.
Or is it all caps?
Oh no. We're doing well actually so far. I haven't had to resort to a search engine to go and solve a problem. Stack Overflow has been notoriously quiet for me tonight. Which is fairly unusual for a coding exercise. I might be JSON result. Actually, thinking about it. New JSON result.
There you go.
That's it. That's the one. That's it.
Nicely done.
Post will be. So I want underscore player service dot save, and then that's going to be passed in from the body.
Yep.
Player state. Player state. There we go. Why doesn't it like that?
That's bizarre.
Yeah, very weird.
So I guess then we want to check if the save was successful, then return your 200 otherwise.
Yeah, so...
Unexpected error or something.
So yeah, we can change that, I guess, and return that as a bool, I guess.
Yep.
Although actually, we don't have a fail state at that point. It'll throw an exception if it doesn't work. Because what we're saying is, if it doesn't already exist, then add it as new. Otherwise, just override the one that's already there.
So is our logic flawed there, I guess?
Never. It's fine. It's all good. I think for now we leave it as it is.
Yeah. For now we can keep it.
And then we can just return OK anyway. So
it's saved. Everything's fine. I promise.
Yeah. In fact, let's start putting something in. To do.
It was bound to happen.
How to handle bad saves. There we go. Okay. So we should actually, I mean, what would be nice now is we could test that. So we could run that now. And I can fire my favorite testing tool. You just open up a new window. Okay, so I've got that, so it's loaded up just to show you the Swagger definition, which is also quite cool. It auto-generated that as well. So we've got those all defined. So we've got our API player state and a post request. You can go and try that out. I can do it all from here. So if I get that now, I should get back null as a response body. Because there isn't anything in there because I didn't send it an ID. Right. Wow. Thankfully that's given me that one there.
That is cool.
So I'm going to drop this into VS Code because my favorite REST client isn't actually that tool. It's to do it here and to do HTTP. And if no one's seen this before, this is my favorite VS Code extension. And this lets me send API requests directly from VS Code. So I'll work out what the URL is now. I'm going to go content type is application JSON.
And the beauty of this as well, as you're getting that together there, Matt, is the fact that you can save this and source control it with everything else.
Yep. That's exactly, that's the way that I tend to do these things. So that is our API URL. It's going to look something like that. We're doing a post request, content to application JSON, and then we've got some predefined stuff in there. Yep. So if I now do send request, we've got an internal server error. Boo. Why have we got an internal server error? It's because we've got our dictionary of inventory items to int. Why isn't that like, okay.
It's because it's had to.
It's not done. It's not gone down enough levels by the looks of it. Because I'm trying to do an object as a key.
It's just assuming a string.
Yeah.
Which is sensible as an assumption.
Yeah.
So do we actually want key? So hold on, let's just step back a second and think what we're trying to actually do here. That bar has a list of inventory items. So it's not, we'd want it the other way around.
I think we need an abstraction above.
I agree. It's almost like a ledger sheet, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we need a Yeah, that's probably good. That's probably a good name for it, actually. Ledger. Class. Come on, wakey. And that's going to be. It's basically two properties, isn't it?
It's a GUID relating to an inventory item and
yeah,
quantity.
Do you want it to be a GUID or do we want it to be the inventory items themselves? This comes back to this question again, doesn't it?
I'd say let's go with consistency for the time being and make it a GUID.
So, inventory item ID, and then prop int count. Okay, so then instead of that one there, our bar is now going to have an array of ledger. Array of ledger? That doesn't sound right. Ledger item, is that? That's probably a better name, isn't it?
Item ledger.
It's an item in a ledger, isn't it? And the ledger property is a collection of ledger items. A ledger entry. Entry. Let's give it a different name.
Different name. Because my mind already is trying to piece together decisions we just made with that. Just English discussion.
And that's our ledger. Okay. That looks about right, doesn't it? That'll then have those. That'll have those. They'll have categories. Yep. So run that again. See what it generates. Let's have a look.
That's what I'm interested in. What will it generate here?
So now we have. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Yep. Inventory item ID. So if I now. Hang on. Not that much. Probably too much. Grab that. Let's stick that into my VS Code post. That should be better. Well, at least give it a couple of items in there. Interesting, it's used the same GUID for all of them. Good job this is going into an in-memory version.
Yeah.
So now we can do that. We've got an OK, player updated.
Excellent.
So now I can go and do that, change that to a get, change that to accept, I think. Well, I don't think you need to do that, but. And now if I retrieve, because I haven't given it an ID.
I do not remember what the GUID was.
It's all right. Thankfully, it'll be just there.
Ah, there we
go. Boom.
Nice.
So we've got data coming back out again, looking roughly the same.
Roughly, very, very the same.
It better be. Otherwise, we've got a whole different set of problems. Now, what's interesting about this, which I hadn't realised before, because I've always gone through and explicitly lowercased the names of all my properties coming out in JSON. I've always used the JSON text or the JSON property attribute on my models. But this has done everything in lowercase anyway, or camel case.
No, it hasn't. Inventory item ID is camel case. Yep.
Yeah. But that's the way I would want them.
Yeah. And I think that's just like convention with JSON properties now, isn't it? And maybe they've just built it in.
Yeah.
What was it? JSON results method, I think.
Yeah, it must be. I'd not noticed that before. I was dreading having to go back and go and edit all those, but I don't need to now, so it's good.
But this is a really good start. I know we joked at the beginning where will we get, but actually I like where we've gotten, because whilst you were just posting and retrieving from the API, I was just sat here thinking about what would be the next logical progression.
Yeah.
And it feels like we may have missed something in our architecting session from last time, and that would be almost like a rules engine.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is because it feels like, from what we've talked about today, there's almost different flavors of rules we could have. There's you order a surplus of this inventory item, this event happens in this district, and
yep,
it feels like these two services combine to generate that game event almost.
Yeah. I'm going to add in just quickly. I'm going to save these HTTP requests.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea.
New file. Let's just do player state.http. Because one of the nice things you can do with this tool is that if I copy that and stick that into this project, like that, I can have multiple requests in the same file. So if I now copy that one into there as well. And actually, one of the cool things that this does as well is that you can use the output of one request in the same file in a different request as well.
I guess you could parameterize as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely. So that will save now, so we can commit that. So we have an API.
Woo! We do.
It's exciting. Code.
Yeah, fair bit. One thing we'll want to do before we push a git ignore file.
Yeah. How has he not got one already?
I don't think so.
Now, do I have the magic git ignore extension on here? Add git ignore. Yes, I do. What do you want? One for Visual Studio?
That would be the one.
Or the VS Code. There you go. That should do that. Which should mean if we go and have a look at our player state service. Why is that not excluding?
I think it needs to be in the folder of, doesn't it? So if you move it,
So move that one into there.
I think just because of the way that they were set up there.
There we go. That's done it.
Yeah.
So does that mean we need a separate one for? We'll probably want one for
Yes.
the copy. Oh, there's one in there already.
You can have one, but you can't.
Yes. Yes. It's an interesting problem, actually. I mean, this is. It's a discussion about kind of the many repo versus the mono repo.
Yep. Wow, how many topics have we managed to brush across in this session?
Because yeah, I mean, we're going down this mono repo idea.
Yep.
Which is fine for what we're doing. I think as from an education piece, I think it's a useful exercise. But the reality is that the project itself probably will lend itself ultimately to being individual projects, particularly if we head down the route of having these individual little APIs for different bits of data.
There is an extreme to each scenario, though, isn't it? Like the mono repo is bad for several reasons. Like, all your code is in one place. You've got this one history. You don't have a history per service. You can't see that nice kind of history for each.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as you start going down that multi-repo approach, it starts becoming a pain to manage. Like, think from the GitHub perspective.
Yeah.
Managing secrets and things like that across all those repos and all of these kind of things, branch policies.
Package management becomes a big topic then. Like the ability, as much as we have this discussion at the start about the idea about sharing models between projects. One thing that a mono repo makes very possible is that you can have a single assembly that can be shared across multiple projects in there, and you don't have to worry about wrapping that up into a NuGet package or an NPM package or whatever to be able to share that around.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's a in one way I look at it and say that there's a right way of doing it for some projects.
Yep.
But I don't think we can be that pragmatic or that dogmatic here. I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's a learning thing here, isn't it? And I think in a real world scenario, there would be a whole list of other factors we'd be looking into.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I always say religion, politics, branch policies, multi-repo, mono-repo, all these things that get these very, as you say, dogmatic one way or the other.
Yeah.
Good. But no, I guess looking at the time and thinking we're starting to wrap us up as well.
I think that's a good place to leave it. So I think we've achieved something. We've written some code. I will push that up to the repo so people.
I was going to say that's a nice way to end it. I think is to go and commit.
So let's do a git commit.
Do you know what? One final thing we could do really quickly just before we wrap up.
Yep.
We could get a GitHub Action workflow just to build on check into main or on a pull request or something.
Yeah, we could do that. Am I in the right folder for this one? Yeah, I guess I am, aren't I? No, I need to be in another level, don't I? Hang on, let me just. I'm at the wrong level by the looks of it.
To your Git add and all that stuff.
Yeah, which is good. Was a good catch before I started to commit stuff because it would.
I know, I've been there.
Created all sorts of problems if I'd done that.
Creating Git repos and trying to push. Oh, it's fun.
Yep. So we're going to do .github.
It looks like there's one there already, mate.
Is there? Oh, you're already ahead of me. Oh, he's got one there as well.
Oh, yes, because I added the things in we said from last time about adding the issues.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to just build the player state service?
I think so, for the time.
Do we want a dedicated workflow for player state, or do we want ultimately something that will build everything?
Let's for now scope it to the single service and try and be granular, because my worry would be super inflated build times if you're doing lots of CI on different services.
Okay, right. So on, I'm gonna see if I can do this from memory now.
Oh, there we go. You're brave.
On push to main.
Well, bring up the schema on the side.
And I always do a workflow dispatch as well, so I can kick it off manually if I need to.
Do you want me to correct you as we go, or do you want to wait?
I think I'm not far off. It's like that, isn't it?
You're not far off. You're missing a colon after
colon there.
That's it.
Is that it?
You've got to indent your dash on there. That's it.
That one, what's up with that then?
You need to put the dash back for the item.
Do I?
Yeah, that's it. That should be okay then, I think.
Oh no!
No! You're missing. What is that?
Oh, it's branches, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, there we go. It even gives me the hint.
There you go.
Right. What's me on? What will me on now?
There's a bad joke in there somewhere.
Not helpful. What have I missed? Come on. Answers on a postcard, please. What have I missed there?
No, that
looks all right.
That looks okay. I think now it's just worrying about the fact
I need jobs. Don't I? Yeah.
To just your name.
So we're going to have there's a built-in .NET task, isn't there?
There is, but before you do that, you have to give the job a friendly name.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a dash. I think it's just a property.
No, it would still need to be an item in the array, wouldn't it?
No.
I thought you need to do it like that, and then you do runs on whatever.
So if you take a look, in fact, if you take a look at the add-issue to project YAML on the left.
Oh yeah, that's probably a good place to start, isn't it? Oh yeah. Yes, I know what you mean now. Yes. So build player state API.
Yep.
Runs on Ubuntu because it's cheap.
Exactly. Hey, we're an open source project, so it's going to be free.
Yeah.
Very cheap.
And then it would just be tasks then, wouldn't it?
Steps.
Steps, yeah.
But I think you want to bring it in an indentation level. No, you don't. I'm lying. Ignore me.
I should just do that as a task, shouldn't I think?
You can either do a run or you can do a... Yeah, you could do that.
.NET build, and then I need to give it the project. Oh no, what I can do is do working directory, couldn't I?
Yep.
And then go /source/
It wouldn't be slash though, would it, at the front? To be relative. That's it.
Space dot player state. That should be it, shouldn't it, I think? Yep.
Yes, I think so.
Now, optimistically, I'd have another task in there that said .NET test, but clearly that ain't gonna happen.
Future scope on the back.
But that should do it, shouldn't it?
I think so.
Commit.
There's only one way to find out.
Yes. Well, technically, there is a way of running them locally, isn't there? GitHub Actions. There's a project that you can use that lets you run them and test them locally.
Yeah, not a first-party one. It's an open source project.
Yeah. Work. No.
I will bring that up.
Well, wakey wakey. Oh, because I'm doing the wrong thing. Don't. Try that again. Git commit message. Git push. Domain. Right. Okay, you've got the build.
So.
Oh, that's the one, isn't it? Oh, yeah.
That is it. Yeah. Act is.
I've never tried it. I've heard it's good.
Yeah, it's on my list. Maybe I should do a blog on it. Maybe we can fit it into one of our.
Maybe that's next week's challenge.
Yeah.
This is where we never actually deliver anything because we get dragged down these little side avenues.
In fairness, remember this was just the basis of learning, right? So
yep.
This is something to learn about, and we can do it.
Do you want to go to the repo and see what the
certainly will.
Are up to? Oh, it failed.
Oh. I know who broke the build. An error occurs. No such file or directory.
Because not install, I guess.
No.
Oh,
there's something else.
What have I forgotten?
So look at the steps that have been ran here. What's not there?
We haven't checked out the code.
There you go.
Muppet. So we have a name checkout uses and
GitHub /checkout, I believe.
Is that what it is?
GitHub /checkout, and then I think it's at. I'll tell you what the latest version is now.
Yeah, it was V2, isn't it?
I'm wrong. I don't think it is. Oh, it's action /checkout, isn't it? Action /checkout.
That's right.
And it's at V2. Yep.
Yeah. Just double check the one I've got here. Yes, that's right. Lowercase. Make sure. I should do it. Commit. Fix workflow by adding checkout.
Well, it builds, or at least it runs. I should say.
Build. So what we haven't done actually is the .NET install that you would usually do there.
But I think that's only to install a specific version of .NET, though, isn't it? Because that is running fine.
Actually, out of interest, what version did it run?
Let's see.
Because it should be set up for .NET 6.
It doesn't call out explicitly, from what I can see. We can reverse it from the build engine, I think, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, the what I'll do is I'll just I'll add in the install task for it. I've got it here, so
cool.
Just to make sure we've got the right version on. There you go. There should be a new version coming through now. Actually, we didn't do a restore either. But
we haven't got
any dependencies.
We haven't got any yet, have we? That's pretty good as well, actually. Haven't brought in any dependencies, although I guess we're only talking a model and an API, to be fair.
We're building .NET types at the moment, so.
Yeah. There we go.
Excellent. Winning.
So we have got a working API.
Yep.
Got our models, and we've got a build.
We do.
That, I think, is a good stream's work, I think.
I think that's that's time well spent, and it's been a lot of fun as well, mate, as always.
Absolutely. So I guess looking forward to next week. Maybe just as a little bit.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, I should say. Yes.
I know
you've got me doing it now. 2 weeks. What do we want to start doing then? I do feel like the rules engine feels like the next sensible place.
Yes.
Because you've got your world data, you need your rules engine to generate the things that your player makes decisions on.
Yes. And I think we're going to have to start doing some stuff with stub data as well, I think.
Agreed.
So we're going to have to start either persisting some, even if we've just got some JSON files stored somewhere that we can use to load in instead.
Yep.
Which
I'm sure we can find some generated data from somewhere anyway as well.
Yeah.
We can even, I'm sure, there'll be libraries and frameworks out there to do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's mock frameworks we can use to do that kind of stuff as well. So, yeah. That's an interesting angle next is to actually load that data that we've just specified and then apply something that changes it.
Yep. Because it's just minimum viable product at that point, isn't it? It's gradually building up, and then we can introduce the complexity later then.
Yep. Awesome.
Good. Well, it's been a lot of fun. I've had to do very little, which is good fun.
Next time, it's your turn next time.
I've got away now. It got away well. But good.
I haven't had to use Stack Overflow once, so I'm feeling good about that.
Oh, I can tell you I would have not left it probably knowingly. I must say, I'm very impressed with your memory of just frameworks and libraries, etc. Mine is absolutely not that good.
It's only because I've been working in it recently. If I leave it for a couple of weeks, it all disappears out again, and I have to start relearning again.
It's like anything, isn't it? The more you do it, fresher it is. It's there. Yeah. No, good. Well, no, been a lot of fun. I look forward to the next one. And we should probably say as well, for anyone who wants to catch us before the next stream, tune in to Microsoft Learn TV tomorrow. A bit of a plug. We are going to be on there at midday UK time talking about API management and DevOps. And we have an excellent guest, because the guest is right there. So if you're interested, join us tomorrow. Otherwise, we will see you in 2 weeks for another ToolUp Tuesday. Thank you for joining, folks. See you soon.